Welcome, everybody. You know me. Well, you haven't met me. My name is Kate Delhagen. I am the founder of Oregon Sports Angels, which is about a 4-year-old angel organization based out here in Oregon, but we have some members across the country. And we are on a quest to find and fund terrific founders for sports and sports tech products in the future. And I am really thrilled to be here to celebrate a bit of Black History Month tonight with 3 amazing Black founders who we have met through our work at Oregon Sports Angels over the past couple of years. So I'd like to kick this off with just sort of a theme, which is first a welcome to everybody who's joined, and especially to our founders for making time in their schedules, but also with our theme, which we talk about at OSA, which is we like to reflect and respect on the past. You know, that we have a lot of lessons from history, and we like to think about that to inform our decisions for the future. We also, in our group in particular, spends a lot of time investing in the future, not just our financial capital, but I'd say as importantly, our social and our intellectual capital. And we do that really in the service of founders who are going to build great next generation companies that we expect will make the world a better place. And then lastly, although it's sometimes a challenge, is to really live in the present. And so as many of us, including our panelists tonight, are all athletes, I think we can all relate to this idea about what's come before makes us what happens, you know, not just in the future, but now. So that's our theme for tonight. I have one more little slide to tee this off. One of the great inventors of all time, if anyone on the call tonight is a golfer, you may know that the golf tee was invented by Dr. George Franklin Grant, who was a Harvard-trained dentist. He invented the golf tee and went on to eventually become recognized for that by the powers that be. So with a tip of the hat to the past, and thanks on behalf of all the golfers, myself included, I'm a horrible golfer, I'm really, really horrible without a golf tee. A tip of the hat to a great inventor and founder, Dr. George Franklin Grant. With that, I'd like to introduce and officially welcome our 3 panelists for tonight. We have 3 amazing founders and CEOs. Wes Felix is joining. He is the founder of Evolve and also the co-founder and CEO of Saysh. You'll hear a bit more about that from Wes in a second. And Wes is currently in Colorado. I guess you're going to say that. But and then Trish Miller is based down in Atlanta, I think, and is the founder and CEO of On a Swim. Thrilled to have met Trish about a year ago, and she's very early on with her company. So you hear more about that. And then last and not least, Ivan Tchatchouwo. Hope I said that okay. Ivan's the guy with the busy whiteboard behind him, but he is the founder and CEO of The Zone. And Oregon Sports Angels have invested either directly or indirectly in Saysh through our partners at the Black Founders Matter Fund. And several members have invested directly in Ivan's company, The Zone. And so again, back to putting and we anticipate hearing from Trish soon as she's early on in building her company. So we're here for you guys, and we're here to learn, to listen and learn from you tonight. So I'm going to stop talking and ask you guys to take the mic, do some intros, and also tell us what Black History Month means to each of you. So no particular order, maybe go in the order I started with and then just go forward.
Well, hey, everybody. I am Wes Felix. Kate, thanks so much for that introduction. It's such an honor to be here and just to get to hang with you guys tonight and have this conversation. So I'm currently, as Kate mentioned, in Colorado. I had a flight that got canceled, so I'm out here in the beautiful snow, which I cannot complain too much about, but normally based in LA, and founded a company called Saysh along with my sister, and that company is a women's lifestyle brand. So our first product is footwear. We also focus on premium accessories. And we built that company just out of the need that we saw kind of in the marketplace, that shoes weren't built for women. And so we wanted to make sure that we were really speaking to women, making sure that we were seeing them and knowing them and authentically showing up for them. And that was all born from my younger sister, Allison, who's an Olympian, her experience of feeling overlooked by some of her sponsors over the years and just wanting to create something that was better. It actually is a much more kind of dramatic story than that. I think I'm making it sound a lot smoother than it really is, but but now that we're here and kind of past that, it's something that has been a really exciting journey. I also run a sports management agency where I get to focus mainly on female Olympians and get to work with them and kind of, I say, like, get to go along their journey and really try to empower them and allow them to create the impact that they're hoping to see in the world, and then also help facilitate them hopefully winning lots of medals for our country. And I think, Kate, you were also asking, what does Black History Month mean to me? And it's a really interesting kind of dynamic, because I think that, there's a part of me that really holds like a great pride around this month, and that we get to really focus on our history and on our heritage. And I think there's also, a little bit of sadness that we need to call out the importance of focusing on that heritage and history. And I think that it, kind of inherently says that as Black people, we can be overlooked by our society. And that's, again, probably a really kind way of putting it, but there are those mixed emotions. And I think that, Black History Month is a step towards progress, but it's also a reminder that progress is still needed. And today we are definitely still in a place where we need more progress. But I think what's really great and exciting about that is it's conversations like this that people are coming together and caring enough to have the conversations. I think that acknowledgement of it, and then just kind of the insight that we can all learn from each other about being humans, and and our shared experience, and also some of the individual experiences are really important. So again, really excited to be here with you, and I'll throw it over to Trish.
Thank you, Wes. Hey, everyone. Such an honor as well to be here, just to meet you and to talk to you about the work that we do. Kate described us as athletes. I am not, I guess I'm an athlete in high school, but I wouldn't call myself an athlete. I came at this work a little differently than a lot of my colleagues in aquatics, in that I almost drowned when I was a teenager. And so it really created a passion in me to understand that experience, and to understand and to find that experience was not unique to me. So my name is Trish Miller. I'm actually headquartered here in Atlanta, Georgia, from the great state of Virginia. And grew up there along the beaches in Virginia, but water, beaches, all of that was not a part of my culture, not a part of how I grew up. Actually, there's a lot of colorism in how I grew up, in that I was to stay out of the sun. So I definitely wasn't to go to the beach, and did not learn how to swim much until my adulthood. Had an experience, as I said earlier, when I was 19, where I almost drowned on a spring break trip. Fortunately, I had some girlfriends that were nearby and able to get me out of the pool. But with my work in public health, I came to understand that the statistics around certain cultures and communities in the water really stem from early experiences that actually we tend to think of around kind of this Black history time, which is unfortunate. But that voyage across, Jim Crow, those kinds of things really have affected the opinions and attitudes that a lot of cultures have around the water. I've built a company that exists only to bring the freedom of water to all humans. So not just Black people, but to all humans who want to enjoy the space. And we identify those barriers that keep people out of the water, and we fix them. The very first flagship product is a fully waterproof swimming cap that is designed and guaranteed to keep the hairs on your head protected and dry while you enjoy the water. It does not exist on the market. It definitely has been something that's been overlooked, because swimming caps traditionally have not been created to do that. They're there to keep hair out of the pool, make you more hydrodynamic if you're in competitive swim, but not to protect your hair. And I'd love to talk to you more later as to why that's a barrier for many, and an important barrier for us to solve. So I'll pass it over to you, Ivan.
Appreciate that, Trish. Great stories, both of you guys. It was a pleasure to be here. And to tell you, Trish, I can't swim, so it's I still can't swim. It's actually very funny. My friends always laugh at it, right? But A bit about my story, as I was telling them before we went live. I'm just a kid from Cameroon, came to the States, the Bronx specifically, at the age of 6.5. I had to learn English through the sport of basketball, right? And that was the only way I was going to fit into the inner cities, because I didn't speak what they spoke. So fast forward, that basketball took me a long way. It afforded me a scholarship in high school. Got to play with some very high level talent. Got injured my junior year in high school, but then it was still afforded an opportunity to play Division II and get a scholarship. Ended up going to Concordia College, small school. My junior year, as I was telling them, became captain. I thought I was going overseas. I had the crazy hoop dreams, and first preseason game, it took me out. I had a knee dislocation, chip bone in my right leg, and from then on, it was like a whirlwind of 3 months. I was literally sitting in my room, and there was things that I was doing that I could never even like come to grips to talk about, at first, right? And I just was finding different ways to cope. My parents, my father specifically, I remember a time where he was taking me to different hospitals to get CAT scans because nobody could figure out why I wasn't just in sync, right? And my GPA dropped the whole point until my coaching staff said we had a sports psychologist on campus. And it waited that long. I've never known that we had one. And I got to go see Dr. Diaz. And, that was kind of one of the greatest things that, could happen to me, because, I was able to be vulnerable and talk to him about anything that was really going on. And he put a name to it. When I was diagnosed with clinical depression, identity theft, was kind of the step for me to know that there was a process, right? It's like having an injury and you don't know what the injury is, you're going crazy. So then I would see him twice a week. And, the findings after I got better was I was only the second athlete to come to him in 3 years. And knowing as a captain what my, younger peers were going through, some of them were going through some scary stuff, they wouldn't walk in that office, right? So try to find a reason why in 2014, fast forward into 2020, where we launched after doing enough research, we launched the tech pilot with 4 universities. Was able to have a lot of learnings on, student athletes, how we differentiate the product from what's out there. And from then on, we were able to, sign some long-term deals with some of those schools. Right now, we're at a place where, we're working with 4 universities. We're set to potentially work with 20 in the fall. We've signed deals with Morgan Stanley to give users more access to financial wellness, right? So we look at the platform as a total wellness platform to make sure that kids have what they need in their pockets, whether they're ashamed to speak out or whatnot. And then we also give the staff an ability to have aggregated data and see what's actually going on at the pulse of their athletes. So yeah, that's a bit about myself in the zone. I'm pretty sure we'll get deep into it. And what does Black History Month mean to me? I think Wes said it best. Acknowledgement, right? But then in 2 ways, like he mentioned, right? Acknowledgement of the history, but then also acknowledgement of, how much work we have to go, so that's the easiest way you can say it without, getting a little crazy. So that's what I have for you.
Awesome. It's super inspiring to hear you guys talk, and we're all athletes, Trish, no matter where. Like what's super interesting, and one of the things I personally think a lot about, and I loved hearing, because it's a theme, which is sort of making the invisible visible. Mm-hmm. And you each described, I would say, sort of some version of a challenge or a problem or a pain or some kind of an internal conflict, and whether it's an internal or just an invisible, but making it visible. So we're thrilled to help bring visibility to all the things you guys are working to solve and make us, better humans. So thank you for sharing that. I did want to maybe turn now to a little bit of our theme of respect the past, invest in the future, and live in the present. So I probably am understating a little. It's been a rough couple of years. We may have had some wins, but we've all had definitely some losses and some struggles. And so my first question for each of you guys is maybe share something about the last year or 2 of your journey, specifically as founders, because it's plenty hard being a human in this world, and it's really hard starting something or building something in this world. So maybe start with Trish, and I'll maybe direct a little of this based on the stage of development you're all in. So Trish is the sort of the earliest in development, and Ivan is probably the next earliest. And Wes, I'd say you might not feel like that, but you're out there with product and generating revenue and doing all that good stuff. So maybe let's hear from you guys some lessons from the past year. as founders?
Yeah. So, just from the past year, just with COVID, and I don't even need to really hang there because the COVID really affected a lot of people. But just a little glimpse into just as a female and a Black founder, I came from a family of where my mother was afforded the opportunity to be a housewife. My father was a crane operator for over 40 years before he passed away. I was the first in my family to go to college. I'm the baby only girl, first to leave Virginia. I was also the first to step out and to leave a good old government job to start something new and fresh. I'm a single parent of 2 teenagers. And I stepped out on faith to do this work full time in 2019. And COVID came around 2020. So needless to say, all of the imposter syndrome, the fears, all of those kinds of things of where I needed to now prove to myself that I could actually make this thing work, and that this was a thing that not just Trish cared about or just that Black people cared about, but this was an issue that was broader than that and that affected people and their ability to enjoy the water. I gave a TED talk, TEDx talk in Atlanta a little bit before COVID shut everything down. And I came at it from a very, I guess, self-focused in terms of a pain point. And I was just sharing my story. Like, this is what happened with my daughter. She wanted to join her school swim team. She has this beautiful, thick, curly hair. And as a parent, I had to tell her she could not participate in swimming. And that tore me to pieces. I'm raising this fierce little girl to do everything that you want to do, be as big and bad as you want to be. And something like hair was the thing that kept her from participating. I never thought about my hair being the thing that kept me from participating, but it did. My mom very much kept me from participating in things so I didn't sweat my hair out when she had straightened it for Sunday church, or I just got a fresh relaxer or perm, which straightens your hair for those of you that don't know. Everything was centered around my hair and when I could participate, when I could do things. And I got so upset about that. And I was like, man, why hasn't anyone built a swimming cap that keeps your hair dry? That's stupid. They should do something about that. And I came to grips with my Gemini self and said, hey, you do something about it. Do something about it. If you don't like it, figure it out. I have never developed a product in my life. I have several degrees from places that have nothing to do with product design or any of that kind of stuff. But I cobbled all of that knowledge together with the passion that I had to create a solution to an issue that affects more than just me, to make a company out of it. And going through COVID was a challenging time because pools and at that time schools with my swimming school were all closed, and I heard crickets all around me, and I had to still keep a company going and keep it in the road. We'll get to this later, I believe, but I'll say the other tough part has been helping others to understand this is not just a Black problem and why they should care and why they should not just care but fund it. We have top scientists. I have the backing of Spanx from Sarah Blakely from Spanx here, headquartered here in Atlanta, textile scientists, people around me that are desperate to solve this issue, but funding continues to be our barrier because not everybody understands the problem. So I spend a lot of time educating the why. And I think at some point we all get frustrated on, this is kind of that invisible piece. Like, this is why it matters. The drowning rates that Kate mentioned when we were offline, that's why it matters. The fact that people have to make a decision about whether or not they can enjoy a sport, or USA Swimming will say that 1.5% of their membership base is Black. That's why it matters. hair is a barrier that we have to pay attention to. And it's not a frivolous kind of, just, pompous kind of, it really, it takes 4 hours to wash my daughter's hair and to detangle it. We can't do that every day for a swim team. Nobody can do that every day for swim team, but it shouldn't be the thing that keeps her from participating in it. So we are creating a solution. So I will pause there. Who can I throw it to?
Throw it to Ivan.
There you go, Ivan.
I don't know how I can follow that. I think you're talking about the past year, what has been tough. What hasn't? Like, I think the number one thing when I think about it now that's very baffling, we're living in a world where over the last 10 years, there's a 56% increase in suicides in our young people, right? So if you got a young person at home as a parent, this is the first time that they've had to really wake up and try to figure out these solutions, right? That's one. Number two, we forget that sometimes we send our kids to these institutions where it's a more profit off of our kid versus being able to create safer environments for our kids, right? And we've learned from some pretty big athletic directors that they have none of that figured out, and it kind of, for me, it's great for the business, but it scares me because, the infrastructure that we have to go in there and create is something that with all that funding, you would think that it's figured out, right? For instance, we've talked to schools where they have two counselors for 30,000 students, right? And you think about it, right? How in the world is, it's not going to be a safe space for the counselors, number one, but let alone for the students, right? So I think the one thing that we've tried to figure out is there's companies that have just, been able to monetize, but created a higher barrier to entry for users, right? We come in at a place where we care, but then there has to be, it has to financially make sense. But I'm such a morally ethical person that I try to go about it the right way most of the time, right? And the vast majority of that, creates it tough, makes it more personal for me. So a lot of my pain points has come about, it's a lot of work, it's really a lot of work to get people to understand that, there's an LGBTQ community that are athletes that aren't being paid attention to, right? It's the Black community. It's kids that go from the Bronx to Arkansas and have to sit there and not understand anything that's really going on. There's a whole different stratosphere for them, right? There's kids with learning disabilities, right? Neurodiverse issues, right? How do we create a safe space for them? And those are all intersectional problems that they have on the wellness side. How do we make sure that, they have a personalized access to things that can help get them better, right? How are we educating the parents on having better discussions with these schools? How are we educating the schools on, what does this data mean? How can it create a safer space so you guys can now do the work? So it's been a lot. I think for me, the biggest thing is making all the decisions, making all the decisions. And like Trish said, I felt like back in 2018, I wasn't going to be taken serious as a Black CEO. So I ended up going to Columbia just to get that degree. Now I have the pressure of those loans just to be able to prove this right? So, I kind of, so stress is coming from everywhere. So having these dialogues and being able to be open and speaking about different issues and sharing this space is very important. So, I thank you guys for the platform.
Wes, before you jump in, Ivan, I just want to piggyback on something you just said, because it's the credentialing that is so challenging as a Black founder. Many times we're not afforded the idea stage. It's the how much sales have you done? It's how big are you? Have you proven this? Have you done that? We're not afforded that on the napkin fund me a few $1 million phase that we hear about. And that's the challenge that I have to VCs or investors, of those angel investors, those that really truly want to level this playing field, is to own that idea phase where the credentialing doesn't need to happen. I have 3 degrees, 3. I don't have anything else to prove to anybody else about what my brain is like. But what I'm telling you is there's a problem that needs to be solved. And I think that that's also what Ivan was saying, is this need for proof, this need for, why can't you be taken seriously as a Black founder?
It's
You know what I mean?
it's
Why is that?
it's even, sorry to, Wes, I know you gotta go, but
Yeah.
it's even like, for me specifically, and I know for others that I've spoken to, it's moving the goalpost, right? It's like, all right, get revenue. Okay, I got it. Okay, now get 50. Okay, I got it. It's like, go get a mill. I'm like, how am I gonna go get $1 million with nothing? Like who has, like, yes, there's people that's done that, but that's gonna be at some point, it's like, where is it? It's not a fair game, which I totally understand now, right? And it kind of draws you to be kind of salty, like I'll be transparent. Yesterday, there's a conversation I had and I could have done better. I could have been better, but there was something that I wasn't budging on because of what was continuously happening, right? So that's what it kind of leads to. And then, you kind of deal with sometimes you end up being the angry black guy, and it's not really true, because it's something that you're really protecting to the core and you're trying to make better business decisions. So yeah, it's rough, but I think that the fact that we're still standing, we're trying to make sure that, the next of kin that kind of, look like us, we're letting things go for the better good of the longer term, and we'll continue to push along, and not many get to do that, or not many are afforded opportunities to do that, so yeah.
Yeah. I think uh, so many things, but first, just, Trish and I've been like, thank you for that. I think, when I look at what both of you are starting and what you've built, there's something that's really incredible. I'll start with you, Ivan, just about what you've chosen to focus on. I think, like, as another Black man who values mental health, struggles with mental health, like, I don't know. I don't know that I can say my best friend, because she's not my best friend. She's my therapist. But I think that, like, my relationship with my therapist has been like this unbelievable gift in my life over the last decade. And coming from, like, a lot of Black kids, like, therapies for white people, like, it's not something that it's weakness, and you're not supposed to go and talk about it, and to sit there in that room and learn that it's actually strength. And it's a strength that you can take to so many places. I think, just incredibly grateful, and also proud is probably the wrong word since I don't know you, but incredibly proud of you that you would go out and, as a Black man, like, champion mental health is so important and so beautiful. And I think also, Trish, for you to be able to go and, and find a space where we are not typically accepted, and to push there. And again, like, it is hard and uncomfortable to walk into those spaces. And it's not just hard because you're trying to win over people who don't look like you. It's, for me, it's most challenging to win over the people who look like
Absolutely.
you. And to see how they're quickly turning their back because you're talking about swimming or mental health, and you're like, well, now I'm really on an island because I'm trying to give you something you absolutely need, and you don't appreciate it, and you're fighting against me, and, like, I'm already fighting enough over there. So just to applaud both of you. I think that it's such a beautiful purpose that you're stepping in. And so, kind of, what I was thinking about over the last couple of years is, one, of course, extremely challenging for everyone, but also that there is something about stepping into your purpose, and that's, like, in the midst of the hard times, the easier times, the good times, the bad times. Like, I think there's been a learning over the last couple of years of sitting in the middle of your discomfort. And that's something for me that, coming from my, like, sports agency background and working with athletes, you're sitting there and you're hearing, hey, they're going to cancel some competitions. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, they're going to cancel the season. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's big. And then, well, they're going to cancel the Olympics. And you're like, okay, well, hold on. Like, what do we do
What are we
now?
doing?
And, like, what comes next? What does this mean? And when you're looking at it as, that's your business, then all of a sudden it disappears, and you don't know what the shoe companies, which for us in our world, you live and die by the shoe company sponsoring the athletes. And so the shoe companies decide they're going to pull sponsorship, and, nobody has any income. And what do you do? Like, what comes next? And so there's the fear part of it. And what do you do with it? What does it look like to sit in it, be patient and wait, not have all the answers, not go and, like, probably like most of the people on this call, like not dig into your type A personality and make it happen because you don't even know what you're trying to make happen. You're just lots of times moving papers around. And then, what do you do with it? And I found myself in this weird spot of sitting, and I love Legos. And like I was building Legos, and as a kid, I loved them. And as an adult, I realized like, wait, there are $250 Legos that will take me 48 hours to build. Like, this is heaven. This is amazing. So I'm like loving quarantine, sitting there. And what it did was it gave me the ability to pause and really look around. And it was a forced pause. But what I saw was that there was another opportunity that we could take. And that opportunity wasn't just about building something. It was about stepping further into your purpose.
Yeah.
And that for us, that purpose ended up being the ability to build Saysh. And, I think probably like a lot of founders, if you knew what you were getting into when you started, you probably would have never started, which I'm so glad that it works the way that it works. And now I kind of find myself when people are asking, like, well, how do you start something? And what do you do about this? And I'm like, you don't need to worry about step 7. Like, there is no step 7 because it's just one step out of a time. And maybe you'll do that 7 times and you'll look back and realize you just took step 7. But in real time, you don't need to worry about that because there's so many variables that are going to change it along the way. And so I think like just what I would say over the last couple of years is, of course, very difficult, but also a lot of hope in all of our circumstances, no matter what it is. In the worst of times, I think there's still that ability to step into your purpose. And that happened to be us building this company along with my sister and our other co-founder. And I love that our company is, it's a consumer company, it's a product company, but at its core, it's really just about people, and it's about seeing people. And, we focus on women, and we feel that women have been overlooked by some of the brands to which they're most loyal, and we want to show up and see them, and I get a lot of questions from investors. We're just closing our Series A, and get a lot of questions from investors of, well, how are you going to convince these women to leave Nike, to leave Adidas, to leave Reebok? Like, I don't know, it's too crowded of a space. And, and I think as I really look at it, there's times when I want to like scream, like, wait, do you think that Adidas really sees those women? Like, do you think they do? Or do you think women just buy it because they don't have any other options? And, you don't really get to ask those questions in the 30 minutes that you get. But I had one investor who, we're going through, and I'm showing her our press, and I'm showing her like all the good stuff, and I'm like, look, here's where we're at. She goes, okay, well, all of this looks great, but if that's the case, then why haven't you sold 5 million pairs of shoes yet? And, and I like wanted to pause and just be like, well, because you haven't given me money yet to make 5 million pairs of shoes. But if you would like to give me the money to make them, then I'll go sell them. But, it is that challenge of constantly being questioned and doubted at every step, that can feel very, make you feel like you're climbing uphill constantly. But there's still that like beautiful part of stepping into the purpose. So it's been a couple of years for me of believing that we're stepping into our purpose, and really creating the change that we want to see in the world. And, hopefully building a successful company allows us to have more impact on the lives around us. And I wish it didn't have to be that way. I wish you didn't have to build a successful company to impact people. I wish you could just sit down and talk to them about real stuff, but it seems that a lot of times you need that qualifier.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I'm going to just comment. I'm the moderator, so I'm going to be cautious and not turn into a speaker. But so many things you guys said hit home with me. One, as the person who made up what's turned into Oregon Sports Angels, I feel you right during that early days. Like, you doubt yourself. But Trish, I'm just going to double down on the credentials might matter in some situations. Like, if I want a surgeon, I definitely want credentials. As a founder, and we've seen this through our sort of meeting different founders from all kinds of walks of life at OSA, I don't think we really think about credentials per se. So I'm like, there are groups who really prioritize that, and then there's individuals, and there's some who don't, right? So I like to say for any founder, try and find people who have a democratic view of the world. Like we're all humans trying to do something, right? So I feel like, because to that point, I had no credentials as an investor. I don't have a banking degree or finance, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it didn't stop me from attracting some other great humans to the mission that we're on. And so from one founder to another, I just like to say thank you for sharing that, because when you find other humans who share your mission, you'll unlock all the stuff you need to build that dream, right?
Yeah.
So, and you guys have all shared some examples of that. Really awesome conversation. And I say that as a woman who left Nike. So did I say that? I did. Let me turn to the second question and maybe ask Ivan to start, which is, imagine, we like to talk about, imagine a world where, and our Oregon Sports Angels thesis, imagine a world where all these things have come to fruition and all these people have achieved their success. And part of that to us is that the potential wealth creation is going to people who might not be typical. And, it's trying to invite people who haven't been invited to be investors. It's inviting founders who haven't had access to capital, because we want to try and, slightly shift how wealth is created and distributed around the world. And we know that our communities will tend to give back to our communities. So with that in mind, I had sent you guys a question, and without going out too far on a loop, but I really think the audience would love to hear from you guys. Imagine a world where your company is massive success. Help us see that vision. What does that look like to you, Ivan?
Yeah, I think the start of it, like I said, is not only athletes, but it's the youth, right? Making sure that, we educate them and we give them a platform where they have a safe space, right? They know that they can trust, they know that they can go to, and it takes them through the process of getting to know themselves, getting to understand their traumas, getting to seek out that help that they need to get to, right? And that's just the beginning. The big next step is, how do we create a safer healthcare system within, the insurance policies, right? Where a mom doesn't have to, choose between milk and, mental health care, right? Where the parity laws is taken care of, where, they're actually just due, right? Where, we're able to fix the supply and demand chain in a sense of mental health practitioners, right? So there's a lot of different front facing, you start with the consumer, the users, but then you bridge on to the communities that impact that, because it's not just them, right? It's a lot of things that layers on that. So, I think, the end goal is to create a space for the young user, but then create environments that protect it and that keep it going, right? Because you can't stop at the user. You got to continue at the household. You got to continue at the infrastructure, where the government standpoint, right? And keep that going on, right? How does that become a part of the education system? So those are the things that, where we're starting. That's where, I see success at.
That's amazing. That's a bunch of structural problems, but yeah. Wes, how about you? Imagine a world where Saysh is.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two things there, and I think one is from the customer standpoint. So from that view, I want to see a world where women look around and they see other women in our products and know that they've been seen, and it's this idea and reminder that you're enough just as you are. That you don't have to be, Alice and Felix, some like crazy Olympian, to have shoes that were made for you, but that you just simply need to be a woman, and that just being you alone, not a woman who does this or that, who strives to be something else, but just a woman who exactly as she is enough. And I hope that, our products become a symbol of that. We have a running shoe that'll be coming out in 2023, and we look at that product, and I really challenged the team. I was like, hey, I need you to make the greatest running shoe ever made for her. And they were like, okay, well, that's way too much. And, we have a very small team and limited resources and all of the things. And I was like, well, you're asking the wrong questions. You're already telling me it's too hard, but you don't even know who her is. And they were like, all right, well then who's her? And I was like, I think I look at it in this big graph circle that I think I saw in probably Women's Running or something, that shows all of the people out there who run marathons, and I don't know, a couple million people. I don't know how many, whether it is, but it's a good amount of people, but it's not that many people in the whole world. And then you go in a little bit smaller and they show this tiny circle that is how many people qualify for Boston or Chicago. And then inside of that, it shows a dot. And that dot is the people who qualify for Olympic trials. And, as a former athlete and an Olympic trials qualifier, I saw that dot. and I identified with the dot, but there wasn't pride around the dot. There was a, well, that doesn't make any sense, because like nobody was making a shoe based off me. So this idea of Olympic trials qualifier being like this end all be all was like, well, it's a cool goal, but like Nike's not making product for Olympic trials qualifiers, you know? And so then I was like, all right, well, how small would that spec be for the people who make the Olympic team? Tiny speck within the spec, still not making shoes for Olympic team members. And then it's, okay, gold medalist. They're still not making shoes for gold medalists. You know, they make shoes for the greatest gold medalist of all time. That's who shoes are based on. And so to be able to take that and say, okay, well, what if I tried to make shoes for the people outside of the initial circle, the big, large circle that I saw on the page, the people who are never going to run a marathon, never going to run a half. They're running, these are women that are running to get 20 minutes of peace from their kids who are screaming, to escape like their husband who like seems to only want to play video games and not get off the couch, and she's just so like tired of it. You know, who's making shoes for them? And that's our challenge, is we want to make shoes for women, you know, for the regular woman who does not need to be this insane athlete. So you know, I imagine a world where women can look around and say, wow, that was, you actually thought about me in that. And I think when you really think about it, the marketing that we see out there, it screams, this is not for you. Like it literally like screams it everywhere and says, we didn't make this for you, but you should buy it so that you can realize you're not enough. And maybe one day you can be enough if you buy these products. But what if we flipped it and showed up and just met women right where they were at? So there's that world. And then there's also the world where I hope that we become a big, massive success so that other young entrepreneurs will look and say, well, what did they do to achieve what they achieved? And I want that answer to be, we didn't overlook the people that we were trying to serve. And so we felt like there was something missing and shoes weren't made for women. Great, but are things made specifically for other groups of people? And why can't we create products for people again and meet them exactly where they are? I think that could be exactly what you're doing, Trish, you know, and you're saying like, hey, it's not that it's not for you, it is for you, and we're going to meet you right where you are. And I think that sadly, you know, massive success leads to other people following in the footsteps. And I think, you know, if you can build a company that really serves people and does it the right way, and it makes a lot of money, people will try to make a lot of money. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'll end it with this one story of when I was like 11 or something, my dad, who's a pastor, he, you know, I asked him for these pair of shoes. It was, some of you actually may have worked on these shoes, but it was a pair of Barry Sanders, like they were the first shoe that had like these like turf little like cleats on it where you could play on AstroTurf when AstroTurf was just starting to like come alive. And they were $125. And I remember going to my dad and saying like, Dad, want these shoes, you know? And he was like, 100, okay, you've fully lost your mind. But he was like, here's what we'll do. If you memorize this book of the Bible, I'll give you $250 and you could buy a pair of those shoes and still have enough to save enough money for another pair later on. I was like, that, like, done, you know? And so I'm sitting there and I'm like studying and memorizing. And, you know, I heard him and my mom over talking one night, and my mom was like, why would you encourage him to go and memorize it for money? He's only doing it for the money. And my dad was like, well, I think that whatever his motivation is, something's going to stick in him memorizing that book of the Bible. And sure enough, like something stuck from it. All these years later, like I still remember like, you know, like big parts of it and important pieces of what the message was. And I think I want to create something similar to that. I don't really care if future entrepreneurs are just trying to get rich. If their path to getting rich is I serve people and serve people authentically and for real, then like go for it, go get rich. You're going to make the world a better place along the way. And I think that will probably change you in some way on your journey. So that's the future I envision for one day for Saysh.
Beautiful, Wes. Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. The world I imagine is really creating solutions for people to do the thing they want to do. And that sounds very esoteric. It sounds very big. But that really was my quest. It was, how many barriers does Trish face in a day? And when does she make a decision to do something about it? This was the one I picked. There's several, there's several more that we can do things about, but this is the one that I feel has the most lasting, potentially the most lasting impact that will live well beyond me, well beyond my children, in bringing back a relationship and a kinship with the space that is spiritual. I didn't really go into that part, but that is the way that I and my team view water. And for people to not experience that for various reasons, whether it's even body image. We have swimwear that addresses body image in the water. There's many other things. There's even goggles, the way goggles are made. They are not inclusive in terms of their design. Creating solutions that bring back that spirituality kinship that people naturally have with the water. That's the reason I get up in the morning. And that is when I can see people have their first splash, and do it without those things kind of over their head of, what am I going to do with my baby's hair at the end of the day? Or what am I going to do with my skin? Or, oh, I'm going to get darker because I went to the beach. When all of those are no longer whispers, that's when I'll feel it's been a success.
I love that. I love that. That's going to go viral, I'm sure, because that's a vision. That's like amazing. You guys have inspiring visions for the future. Thank you. Like, it's good. And it's really good. We do have a couple, maybe a question from the audience. I did want to encourage the audience to drop your questions into either the chat or the Q&A. We'll have a little time at the end for them. I didn't have a chance to mention that earlier, so please go ahead and do that. We'll get to that in a minute. Our last official question, maybe I have a closing question, but my last official question per our theme is, and I think you talked about living in the now a little bit, each of you. What's going on right now for you? And this is really knowing that some of our listeners are either belong to companies that are building or thinking about starting a company or wherever they are in a journey, founder or otherwise. What's your top focus like right now? Not the second because it's here, but like 2022 maybe. Maybe we'll start with Wes because I don't think you've kicked us off yet.
Yeah, focus for 2022 for us is really about raising our brand awareness and trying to grow, but grow at a pace that's aggressive, but also is not reckless. I think that especially for us kind of going down this venture-backed path, there's a lot of pressure on growth. I was talking with a potential investor and we were showing, I think we were projecting 125 million in revenue in year 5. And she looked back and she was kind of like, I just don't know if your vision's big enough. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if you need it bigger than that, then like, I don't think I'm your guy, because like, that feels really big to me. And as it is, that feels really scary of how we get there. But if you need double than that, like, I don't know, it's not it. So trying to scale responsibly and also scale at a point where kind of like some of what I shared earlier, that we don't lose sight of our mission, because I don't want us to, as a company, or even just my sister and I don't want us to get lost in that journey. I want to really hold on to what is most important in it and not lose sight of that. So yeah, it's responsible growth and awareness would be my vision for 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Trish, how about you?
Yeah, so our vision for 2022 is to really get this product launched. So we are at the finish line. We're working on actual package design. We're at the tail end of our testing. So we've done a little promotional video, all those kinds of things that are really teeing us up to be able to launch. Wes, I hear you on kind of that scale and that responsible growth. That's a fear of mine as well, because it is one of those things where it's like, wow, once it hits, are we ready? Are we ready for this? And, you know, and also seeking those in our network or in my network specifically that have launched products so that the learning curve isn't so great for me. A lot of those things I am figuring out, and I am, you know, Googling it. I have a lot of talents. However, you know, this one is a new ground for me. It's scary, but exciting all at the same time. So those really are our focuses for this year. So I'd love for people to just continue to follow our work and stay tuned and support it.
Awesome. And your product will be in the market this year, do you think?
That is the goal. Yes,
okay.
That is the
Just
goal.
want to make sure
no later than the fall. Yeah, no later than the fall.
Cool. We'll have you guys at the end. We'll make sure we drop into the chat, and by way of follow-up, links to you guys, your social, your websites, and all that, because people are definitely interested. Ivan, how about you? Kind of here and now, what's going on 22 for you?
We're launching a new product cycle in the fall. So, you know, we just brought on a pretty big CTO in the space. So that's exciting. We got the whole product roadmap. We're also jumping into big partnerships conference-wide. We're hoping, you know, anywhere from 10 to 20,000 users in 22. That's the goal, especially going B2B and figuring out, you know, what's that fixed thing that, you know, our problem consistently solves for the user. You know, those are the big thing, right? And then the next thing is amplifying the voices of student athletes on the campuses that we're at, right? Continue to build in that brand and create trust with the user around mental well-being. So those are the kind of things we're focused on this year.
Awesome. Well, plenty to do. Sounds like you guys have pretty dialed in goals for the year. Not surprised. Hey, let me bring in one quick question from the audience, and then ask you maybe a last one, unless there looks like maybe another audience Q&A. So let me turn to audience Q&A. We got one from Chris, who said, did you guys start your companies while still holding a day job? If so, how did you manage the transition and potentially secure some funding? So it's the perennial, are you doing it on the side, moonlighting, or did you quit your job and start your company? So maybe, I don't know, each of you guys share a little bit of that.
Yeah, I can. Oh no, go for it, Ivan. You got it.
Appreciate that. I think, you know, for me, when I was at Columbia, I was there. So I had a director of sports performance job in the wellness industry, dealing with athletes and injuries. So I would be there sometimes, you know, because I had some elderly folks also. I'll be there 5 in the morning to about 12 in the afternoon. 12 to about 6, I would work on the zone. 7 to about 10, I would be at Columbia, right? And then fast forward into when I graduated, it was just those two aspects for the first 3 years. And it's now, like, think about it, from 5 to 12, and then from 12 to about 12, I'll build the zone, right? So it's now that I'm wavering off of that other gig and, you know, just really tripling down on continuously building this as we're growing the team. And, you know, we have a whole team under myself and my co-founder. So, you know, it was 5 years of the grind, let's just say, you know, and you don't make complaints, you just do the work. And like what said, that purpose drives you. So.
Okay, thanks. Either of you guys?
Yeah, so I actually worked for the CDC in public health and left that work in 2019 to do this full time. I felt like I was not able to give it 100% of me when I kind of teetered over the fence, one leg over in my good comfort, secure space. And the way I operate, my back has got to be against the wall to make things happen. And it wasn't until I took that leap. One of my mantras is leap and the net will appear. And I decided to do it. And that's when the magic really started to happen. It doesn't work for everybody. And I'm not, please don't go and quit your job tomorrow and say, Trish said it on the webinar. Don't do that. However, if you got the stomach for it, and if that's the thing that pushes you and moves you, bet on yourself.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that, Trish. The bet on yourself, I think, is so important. And I think it can show up in different ways. So I love the question about, like, how do you manage the transition? I would say for me, I I haven't started the transition yet. I'm still balancing both jobs of running my agency and then also running Saysh. And there's no shortcut. It is a grind, and it's a grind every single day. And I think that, you know, for me, what gets really challenging is it's a lot of talking, it's a lot of meetings. And so I feel like I'm at like 10 hours in and I'm exhausted. And then I'm like, but I haven't done anything yet today. All I've done is talk to people. I'm like, I still haven't done any work, you know? And so, so it's really challenging, but I do think that bet on yourself piece, it makes it where it's all worth it. And you do figure it out. I think like the other question of like, generating funding for the business, going into fundraising, that was probably my biggest fear from ever starting anything previously. I started something small when I was right out of college at 23, but my biggest fear was fundraising, you know, and I was just like, why would anyone ever give me money to do anything, you know? And I don't know if it's cultural, like I don't know if it's being a pastor's kid, like I'm not sure, but there was a real fear about asking people for money. And it wasn't just that I didn't think they would give it to me. I thought that very, very strongly, but it also felt like I wasn't supposed to. It felt like I was supposed to find a way to do it some other way. And so, you know, that for me, that leap was saying like, we're going to build this and we're going to go to our seed round. And in the seed round, for me, that's where I think like I started to find confidence. And yeah, so I would just encourage like that is you've got to bet on yourself. You've got to jump in some way. It's building something is not comfortable. There's nothing, there's just nothing comfortable about it. So if you're waiting for the comfort, like you're just not going to build it. It's not comfortable. So, and it's hard, you know. And also fundraising, even if you feel good at it, even if you think you've got a great product, like I always felt like you'd hear people say it's a whole other job. They're just not lying. It is a whole other job. So, you know, if you already have two and then you're about to fundraise, then like you've got 3 jobs because it's definitely a full-time job.
Yeah, yes, and. Okay, I think let's do one more cue from the audience, and then I'm looking at time. We're a little bit at shot clock, but I do want to hold a minute for the last question. But let's take maybe one question from Haley. When you first started to receive funding, how did you decide how to allocate that capital? Product development, marketing, hiring a CTO, like, or whatever. So maybe each of you, we're all in very different businesses, product and platform, community, and then really a digital app with a large community application. Maybe just a quick thought on if I were a founder listening to the call and I got a little money, how to think about allocating that capital. Maybe start with Trish.
Yeah, I would say assess what will move your needle in some direction, right? So if what is the most immediate need? To me, there's no science to it. You know, I think that I'm very gut driven in a lot of these things. And so it for me was, okay, how do I get from point A to point maybe 8.4? And what gets me there? That's how I allocated it. I was self-funded for the first few years of my business, because it was back to that bet on me. If I can't put it all in on myself, then how can I expect someone else to? That was how I felt. And again, I don't know if that's cultural too. I don't know where that stems from. But I was willing to be self-funded, and I allocated those. I definitely paid people before I paid myself. It took forever for me to draw any kind of, my product isn't even on the market. So, I had to have a swim school in order to be able to meet regular expenses. However, I would just look at, potentially maybe there's 5 things that you can think of as a founder that really get you over that first hump, and prioritize it. There's no science to it. Use your gut.
Thank you. Awesome. Ivan?
Yeah, it's a little straight off what Trish said. For us, we're product led. we're not sales led, we're product driven, right? The product brings inbound sales in, the product brings the user's attention, man, and you gotta go fail at it. You're not gonna figure it out at first. We're on our third process of the product, right? So, but using, being self-funded in the beginning and, going through the failures with, a big chunk of my own money kind of led to, okay, this is what it's about, this is what takes the next step, so you kind of trust your gut a little bit more when you get into that second step because you understand a little bit deeper. So you're gonna go through the process of failing. If you're trying to run from that just stop. You're gonna go through the process of failing. So it's just figuring out what moves that needle, like Trish said.
Yeah, we've had 78 iterations of the swimming cap.
I feel like you're talking to us as angel investors. We got to go through it. And we're going to have some failures too, but it's part of the process. You got to get in the game and start doing some stuff and get some reps in, and some are going to be good and some are not going to be so good. So I appreciate that. Wes, how about you? Last thought on this one, and then we'll have our last question.
Yeah, totally. I think that, what I was thinking about there with that question is you've got to be brutally honest with yourself about what the business is that you're building, and I think there's a lot of questions you get about like, what's your exit? And what do you, like all of these things that feel kind of like cliche and, like, does it really matter? And I think that my learning has been, yeah, it does really matter. And what are you building? And this idea that venture is going to be interested in all businesses, it's not true. So I think like if you have a business that is a venture candidate, I think that looks a little bit different on where you should put your money. If you have a tech platform, a little bit different on where you should put your money. If you're a product driven company and you're not going to be a venture candidate, then I think you should invest heavily in your product and make that the greatest thing it could possibly be. Mm-hmm. If you're a product company where, you potentially have venture backing, that's something that's feasible, then I think you need to spread it out a bit more because they're going to look and say like, well, that's cool that you have a great product, but you could have the greatest product in the world. If nobody's going to buy it, then it doesn't really matter. How are you going to tell people about it? So for us, we're self-funded up until our seed round. So that was, for us about a year, and we invested in product. We went and found developers, designers that were some of the best out there and women that we really believed in. And we put it in the product first and then put it to marketing, then put it to the rest of the team. And I'm hoping that one day we will put it to me, but it's not there yet. So, so it's also like very hard when you're talking to your team and they're complaining to you about what they get paid. And you're like, sir, I have $0.
On that note, I feel you. We're not a venture fund. We're a network of do-gooders and none of us are paid. We can relate. So there's so much you guys have shared tonight. It's like totally relatable. I love it. Let me ask you guys before we sign off. I like the idea of, hey, Black History Month, let's just go Black History Year. Let's just talk about it like all the time, and let's just normalize things so we don't need them in the same way, right? Whether you're wherever you come from as humans, I think we share that agenda. So with that in mind, I know you've all been inspired by great, amazing humans, but help us learn from you guys. Who's a Black person that you really look up to, past, present, historical, sports, doesn't matter. I really love to learn from you guys. Who do you think is someone we can all look to for inspiration? Maybe start with Trish and then Wes, and then Ivan can bring us home.
Yep, I'll keep it quick. My father is the best example of a Black man I have ever met in my life. He did not know how to read and passed away not knowing how to read, but yet afforded my family the ability for us to live comfortably and did not know just how poor we were. So if there's ever a strength of strength, I mean, just a showing of strength, perseverance, all of those things, all of that is within me. So he is my top example.
Awesome.
I love that, Trish. I think that I won't go with my dad, but I do think that my dad has imparted so much wisdom on me. And I love that piece of you didn't realize how poor you were. I remember laughing as I got older when my dad would send us, we went to private school and he'd send us to private school with our check for the field trip or whatever it was, and would say, now tell your teacher not to cash this until I didn't know that wasn't normal, until later when I was like, wait. Did that man really send me into school with a post-dated check for a field trip? Like, okay, he did. So we must have been poor. But I was like, because the field trip couldn't have been more than $15. Like it was the science center, But I think like someone that I really look up to, and it's gonna sound again super cliche, but I would just ask to like really like focus in on what this woman has done is Michelle Obama, and just absolutely adore her and what she stands for. And we just launched a podcast this past week called Mountaintop Conversations, and it's coming from Michelle Obama's, in her book, she talks about, reaching that mountaintop and going and sitting at, I always envision she's talking about like Davos or something, and sitting there with like the richest of the rich, the most powerful, the people whose names we don't even know that are actually running the world behind the scenes. And, and she said that she was there and she looked around, and what she can tell us is they're no different than us. But that once you get there, you can't just sit down at the table and kick your feet up, that your job is to actually walk back down the hill, extend your hand, pull somebody else up with you, and then keep on climbing. And so I think that for me, that's someone who I just have so much respect and admiration for. And it's more about the lesson of we each have to do our part. And if we can be inspired by someone to do our small contribution, then I think we all end up looking around with a lot of people up on that mountaintop. So Queen Michelle would be mine.
Love it.
Nah, that's super.
Okay, Ivan.
The person for me is I don't know if you guys know him, Reginald Lewis. The first time I read the book, Why Do White Guys Have All the Fun? For me, it kind of made me believe like, I can do this, right? I can't, all these dreams that's in my head, I can't take that step, right? He came from an athletic background, one of the first Black billionaires, and just consistently pushed, right? It was daring, build big businesses, and there was nobody like him around, And for me, like I said, when I first read that book, it helped me take that step forward and just keep going, right? Because we're not around people that just taking these steps like us, right? So yeah, Reginald Lewis for me was, and still is, one of the most influential person for me.
Awesome, amazing. So Trish, I'm sorry, we will not know your dad, but may he live long and through you. And Wes, I'm a big proponent of Michelle's book. I really liked her organization principle of becoming me, becoming us, and becoming more. And that just kind of is a great North Star for any one of us, right? It's just the aspirational, become more. And Reginald Lewis, one of, like you said, epic figure in Black business, as a Black businessman. So thank you guys for sharing that. I know we didn't have time for everyone's questions, but I see some people on the end clapping and sending some serious love your way. So I just want to thank you guys so much I'm sure we could talk for another hour, but it's late for you guys on the East Coast. And our panelists, thank you so much for joining us. We invite everyone on the call tonight. Please spread the word, follow us on our LinkedIn or Twitter handles. We'll post on that LinkedIn and Twitter tomorrow a link to the webinar recording, so you can share with friends who might not have been able to join tonight, and just continue to amplify some of the great comments from tonight. And also, may we all convene again together soon. So on behalf of all of our team at OSA, thank you guys so much. Really inspiring evening, and go forth and, I guess I would say, get to the next mountaintop. Just bet on yourselves. Love it. Thank you guys.
Bye. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you guys.